onlyness. Nope, I didn't misspell loneliness, although they can be related. Onlyness is the state of being the only one of an indicated or implied category. Think of the last time you experienced onlyness at work. Maybe you were the only woman in a meeting, maybe the only person of color on your team, maybe the only parent on your team. I had a fairly transformative onlyness moment at Atlassian about 5 years ago. At the time, I was the only woman on my team, but it didn't really feel like it because I collaborated with and socialized with women all throughout the office on a daily basis. But we were quickly growing out of that space, and as we searched for a second location in the interim, we opened a second spot, and my team was one of the chosen ones to move over. Suddenly, I wasn't just the only woman on my team, I was one of only 2 women in the entire office. And it was a shock to the system. I was really missing that community that I left behind. So myself and the other only woman teamed up to see what we could do. What started off as a selfish way to get more Atlassian women to come hang out with us grew into a more structured community that spread to other offices, eventually evolving into a global group that we call GET, Gender Equity in Tech at Atlassian. You can think of it as a sort of grassroots employee resource group, or ERG. In creating and being part of a community like this, I found a lot of meaning, and most importantly, helped others feel a deeper sense of belonging and support at Atlassian. I've learned a ton along the way that I'm so excited to get to share with you today. My name's Shannon Winter, and I'm a senior brand manager at Atlassian. And more specific to this talk, I helped create that inclusive community that we just talked about. Today, I'm going to share the steps for creating an inclusive community at your own company, along with some resources to help get you started. I want you to leave feeling confident, inspired, and well-equipped to build a community from the ground up around an identity or a passion that's meaningful to you. Now, you might be thinking, isn't that HR's job? And to some extent, absolutely. Company leadership and people or HR teams are definitely accountable for creating diverse and inclusive cultures, particularly when it comes to more top-down systemic policies and programs. But I believe every individual and every team, regardless of who you are or what your role is responsible for cultivating an inclusive culture where people feel like they belong. So let's get down to it. How do you grow an inclusive culture from the ground up? I'll walk through the steps and sprinkle in some examples from that community I created, just with the hope it can serve as inspiration as you think through what type you might want to create. Now, there are, of course, a number of things I could share on this topic. If I had time to chat with you all over coffee, I would talk your ears off for hours. But in the interest of time, I'll just be sharing these 5 most essential steps. So I have Team Up listed here first because, well, first off, this is the team conference, and we're all about teamwork here at Atlassian. But aside from that, it's really just so much easier to collaborate with at least one, if not a few other people on something like this. You'll get to collaborate on ideas, lean on each other for support, bounce concepts off each other, and even tap into each other's separate networks throughout the company to bring people into the community. Depending on what type of community you create, you really just need to find people who share something in common with you. And think intersectionally. Really, the more intersectional, the better. You don't have to limit yourself to one category or one identity, and your community doesn't have to either. So after you have your team or your co-leaders, you need to really assess the need together. After all, you want to build a community that reflects the need of employees. You want to fill some type of gap for them, make it really meaningful so people want to join. Maybe kick this off with a short survey you send out or have some conversations with people throughout the company. When we first started our group, we reached out to a bunch of women throughout Atlassian to find out what they were missing and what gaps we could potentially fill there with our community. Based on what you learn about needs, you can then create a mission. Just think of this as kind of your guiding light, North Star, what you want to accomplish with this group you're creating. To give an example, our most recent iteration of our gender equity in tech mission is to claim space and create community as we drive towards gender equity at Atlassian. And finally, consider holding a pre-mortem. Think of this as the opposite of a retrospective. It's your chance to think of things that might go great or not so great before you even begin. So you have time to highlight the good and hopefully remedy the bad before you start. There's going to be some links in my speaker resource center that you can access. And one of them will be a link to the Atlassian team playbook and the pre-mortem play specifically, so you can have a guide to walk you through how to run something like this. We're calling this next step share. You've found your leaders, you've decided what the mission's going to be, you've dreamt up this wonderful idea, but now you actually have to spread the word. So I have executive buy-in listed first because it is awesome if you can get someone in a formal leadership role to provide support. This is not needed, so don't let it be a blocker, but it's so nice to tap these kind of leaders to help spread the word, add more legitimacy to your program, even maybe potentially down the road offer resources in the form of budget for something like external speakers or swag. Executive buy-in or not, you have to figure out how to reach the employees who this community would speak to. After all, you're creating it for them. The tip here is to meet people where they are. Maybe that's in various Slack channels. Maybe you write a Confluence blog. Maybe you get a speaking slot at a team or company town hall. Maybe there's even an email list that has all of the new hires at your company who are probably dying to find some community right off the bat. You get the point. Be creative and follow the best announcement and communication practices at your own company. So you've designed the community, you've gotten the word out. Now you actually have to start experimenting with how that group is going to come together. So this third step is test. There are so many ways to hold community get-togethers. Obviously, it's virtual for now, but I still suggest you experiment with different types of formats. With our community, I found mixing it up works the best. So we'll do a guest speaker one month, maybe a small group discussion the next. It can really be as easy as choosing a topic, breaking into smaller group discussions, and then coming back together to share more broadly with the group. A few tips for this step. Start small. This can really just be a few people coming together on Zoom to start, and you can scale up from there. I really want to stress that this doesn't have to become a huge group overnight. Start small, get the word out there, and it will naturally spread after you've had a session or two. It can even be great after your first session to tell everyone to bring one friend along from their team or wherever throughout the company, and you'll start organically bringing in more participation. The next step is just to keep participation really lightweight. One great way to ensure people want to join is to just make it easy. Everyone is so busy. We have Zoom fatigue. You want to make the community time something that people look forward to, not this other dreaded thing on the calendar or a chore. So try not to require prep or homework if possible, just to make the most of your time together when you are with that community. And finally, keep it remote friendly. Obviously, this is a must these days, as if we even have to say it, but I actually do recommend keeping it remote friendly, even if you do go back to an office. Keeping it remote and kind of digital first really allows you to take advantage of tools like Zoom. You can use the breakout room features, create special Zoom backgrounds to set the tone for the group. And it keeps it really inclusive. No matter where someone is, they can join, and that is awesome. Okay, so we have our group. We've gathered some participants. We've had our first session. Now it's prime time to get feedback on how it's going. Measurement and learning are key for improving anything in life, and this is no different. I really recommend sending out a quick survey after each community get-together or session that you have to learn what's working and what's not. This can be as simple as a quick 2-question thing. What did you like about it? What can we improve for next time? For longer term learning, it would be great to meet up with those other co-leads that you gathered and hold quarterly retros to figure out kind of broader changes you might want to make. Again, we are going to link the Atlassian team playbook play for running a retrospective if you want help and templates to get you started. And while learning from your own community is really what's most important, you're building it again for them, it can also be incredible to get outside perspective, whether from other communities within your own organization, maybe you already have some employee resource groups or ERGs that you can tap into who already have a more structured and formal thing going, or even reach out to groups from outside of your company. The community I help lead has done mixers with ERGs from Dropbox and other companies. And even if their community is based on other ideas or other identities, it is so incredible to be able to share ideas and learn from one another, because oftentimes you're going through the same struggles that you can support each other in. Now, all the measurement and learning in the world doesn't matter if you don't put it into practice. So the final step is all about actually improving and growing over time. So continue to adapt. Actually start to implement some of those things you've learned in the surveys, pulled out of the retrospectives, chatted with other groups about. And keep it relevant. This will keep people excited to keep joining your discussions, and will help, again, get that word out there more. So keep topics relevant to what's going on at your company, maybe even what's going on in society. For example, when we first started our group, it was actually at the time when the Me Too movement had just really taken off. So we had some very timely and important discussions as a community around that. And grow. So I think I've mentioned this a lot, but always be recruiting. Plug your community whenever possible. Similar to that step 2, our sharing step, just continue to share about your events in whatever way works for your company. Write blogs with summaries of events you've already held if you don't want to keep those particular discussions more private. Spotlight community members. The list could go on and on. Just do what you can to keep it top of mind so you can continue to build this thriving, supportive community that helps build belonging. I hope that these steps have proved helpful, but I also want to help you get started with a couple resources. So again, if you look in the session portal, you'll find a link to a Trello template that will help you keep track of sessions, track participation, brainstorm for future events. It is totally a canvas you can build off of, but it should be a good way to get going. You'll also see those plays I've already mentioned from the Atlassian playbook, but also one more that I have not mentioned yet, which is a project kickoff. If you are so excited to go, but don't really know where to get started, I would very much recommend running this project kickoff with the co-leaders that you found to help kick this whole thing off, because building something like this is a project. One of my favorite Atlassian values is be the change you seek. My hope is you found something in this talk that inspires you to be the change, to use the steps and the resources that I shared to create an inclusive community at your own organization. So before you go back to your day and get distracted by a million things, do 2 super quick things for me. The first is to write down what type of onlyness you might want to help alleviate. The second is to send a quick note to a coworker or 3 that you think might be interested in teaming up to help. Get the momentum going right now. My hope is that you can turn feelings of onlyness into feelings of togetherness. Thank you for joining. I am so grateful you took the time out and would absolutely love to support you along your journey. So do feel free to reach out to me if I can be of any help. I have my email down there. I believe there will also be a speaker Q&A on the Atlassian community that you can head to ask me questions.